We are plunging directly into the academic analysis of the text provided to us today. Specifically, we are examining the foundational premise established following the Mudros Armistice in 1918.
Right, and you see immediately in the text that British policy in Istanbul and Anatolia was not merely a standard military occupation.
No, not at all. It was designed to establish unilateral absolute power. The documentation indicates it was a deliberate plan to punish Turkey.
Yes, and to explicitly serve as a deterrent to other, quote, oppressed nations. That is the macro-level policy we are analyzing.
Indeed. So to really grasp the structural dynamic of this occupation, you have to look at the British monopoly on authority.
Exactly. A key artifact here is the February 2nd, 1919 War Office document.
The one delineating the zones of responsibility.
Precisely. It stated that while France was responsible for European Turkey, British commanders were given absolute authority in Asian Turkey.
And crucially, they were authorized to conduct military operations without even consulting their allies.
Right. No consultation with France or Italy. It was a complete marginalization of the Allied powers.
Which was mirrored by the diplomatic corps. The January 16, 1919, Foreign Office alignment asserted that Britain had the sole responsibility for enforcing the armistice.
I mean, you can see the tension this created, particularly with France. The text provides a very striking detail about the French general Franchet d'Espèrey.
Ah, yes. He entered Istanbul, quote, like an emperor.
Right, projecting visual dominance. But the true architectural reality of power lay entirely with the British general Milne.
Because Milne had received his independent operational directives directly from London.
Exactly. And this marginalization of the French was formally defended at the highest level.
Yes, you look at Prime Minister Lloyd George's September 15, 1919, letter to Georges Clemenceau.
He successfully argued that allowing a French command in Istanbul would, well, that it would severely damage British prestige in the broader Islamic world.
It is a masterful geopolitical maneuver. So, linking this macro-level policy of unilateral control to the micro-level, we must ask an analytical question.
Right. How did the British operationalize this punitive stance toward an Ottoman leadership that was, ironically, actively seeking their protection?
Exactly. The Ottoman elite were offering submission, yet the British response was brutal.
On November 13, 1918, British troops were given a direct order to give no quarter to the Turks.
Meaning absolutely no diplomatic leniency?
None. And this extended directly to the Sultan himself. Sultan Vahdettin found his diplomatic overtures completely rejected.
Even though he made public declarations that he pinned his hopes on Britain after God, as he phrased it.
Right. He was systematically barred from meeting British officials.
We have the specific refusal from March 21st, 1919.
Ah, yes. Admiral Webb.
Exactly. Webb formally refused the Sultan's request to meet with the advisor, Haller.
And later that year, on December 15th, Admiral de Robeck reported that he had outright refused a royal audience.
A refusal that was officially approved by the Foreign Office. It was a policy of total isolation.
They even banned Allied officers from attending the Selamlik ceremony.
Because attending the Friday prayer procession would imply official respect, which they deemed a violation of the armistice terms.
Precisely. In fact, over the early occupation, the High Commissioners only met the Sultan once.
That was on August 21st, 1921, wasn't it?
Yes. And the sole purpose of that singular meeting was to aggressively demand the suppression of the national movement.
I see. And we also must consider the treatment of the heir, Crown Prince Abdülmecit.
Right. Because he appeared vaguely sympathetic to the national movement, he was severely disciplined.
He received a harsh warning from Chief Dragoman Ryan.
Even though the Crown Prince subsequently labeled the national movement as treasonous to appease them, he was still punished.
He was placed under strict house arrest for 38 days.
Surrounded by barbed wire, no less.
Yes, under a joint British-Turkish police guard. He was only released after writing a pleading letter directly to General Milne.
This pervasive deep freeze was mandated from the top. In November 1918, Lord Balfour issued strict directives to Admiral Calthorpe.
Directives regarding hospitality, correct?
Right. Balfour explicitly ordered his officers to reject all Turkish attempts at hospitality or friendship.
Because he wanted to prevent the Turks from driving any diplomatic wedges between the Allies.
Exactly. General Wilson relayed this down the chain, framing any Turkish hospitality as a mere propaganda tactic that must be strictly avoided until a peace treaty was signed.
Which brings us to the futility of the Anglophile Turks.
It is a crucial transition. You have Ottoman politicians actively trying to curry favor.
While France and Italy were offering vague political hopes, the British maintained absolute transparency about their punitive intentions.
Right. Even to their most ardent Turkish supporters.
Which raises the question, why did the British maintain this unyielding stance when they were being offered submission?
Because they needed to ensure there was no illusion of partnership. You see this in the specific rejections listed in the text.
For instance, Ottoman Foreign Minister Mustafa Reşit Pasha.
Yes, on November 22nd, 1918, Webb and Holler told him directly that gaining British sympathy was outside their duties.
And the secret treaty drafted by Demet Ferit and Sultan Vahdettin.
The one proposing a formal British protectorate.
Yes, Webb rejected it out of hand.
They even rejected their own intelligence assets. St. Molla, the founder of the English Lovers Association.
Right. General Deeds told him plainly that the goal was to ensure not a single Turk doubted the severity of their impending punishment.
And Ali Kemal was bluntly informed that peace would be dictated, not negotiated.
The most extended example of this stonewalling involves Galip Kemali Solimazolu.
Ah, the Ottoman representative on the Mixed Armistice Commission.
Exactly. He made repeated attempts to initiate dialogue with General Deeds.
During their first encounter, Deeds responded by recalling Lord Kitchener's vow to fight until Turkey is destroyed.
Saying that sentiment hadn't changed. But Solimazolu tried a second time, 6 months later.
He presented a very logical analysis, warning of French-British friction and the danger of the Greek occupation of Izmir.
He essentially proposed an independent Turkey as a natural, vital British ally in the region.
But Deeds' final response was an absolute refusal. He stated Britain would offer no guarantees.
He even said they would not treat Turkey with the consideration given to the Balkan states, and advised Solimazolu to adjust his language to reality.
The British diplomatic corps actively boasted about this posture.
Admiral de Robeck, in October 1919, boasted that Britain was the only country snubbing the Turks.
Supported entirely by Lord Curzon's July 1919 confirmation that they were turning a deaf ear to all pleas for British protection.
So we see the diplomatic stonewalling. Now we must connect this to the physical dismantling of the Turkish military.
Right. The text suggests a highly selective interpretation of the armistice terms.
How did the British actually execute the physical demobilization?
Primarily through strategic encroachment. They stretched the armistice boundaries continuously.
For example, pushing Turkish forces toward Pozanti to facilitate their own entry into Cilicia.
And pushing Ali Hassan Pasha back to occupy Mosul and temporarily Diyarbakir.
They justified this retroactively, claiming Mosul belonged to Iraq and Iskenderun to Syria.
It was governed by General Allenby's November 1918 rule. No objections allowed.
He framed any Turkish delay in compliance as inherently deceitful.
This led to a profound demobilization crisis. Lord Curzon stated in March 1920 that the military profession was completely closed to Turks.
They even forbade them from joining the French Legion.
The human cost is documented by Rafour Bey.
Right. His complaint about demobilized, starving soldiers wandering the streets of Istanbul, forced to beg from foreigners.
And the logistical scope of the weapons confiscation was massive.
It involved surrenders abroad, like Prince Osman Fuad in Libya and Sey Pasha in Aden.
In Medina, Ferritin Pasha resisted the surrender demands until January 10, 1919.
Which resulted in his immediate exile to Malta.
If you look at Larcher's statistical data on the confiscations, it is staggering.
187 cannons.
145,000 rifles.
And 678 machine guns. The 13th Corps was reduced to just over 9,000 functional rifles.
Because over 35,000 of their rifles had been deliberately disabled by the British.
Ali Fuad Pasha noted that the Western commanders surrendered vast materials, rendering the 12th, 13th, and 17th Corps entirely powerless.
But it wasn't just weapons. Look at Kazım Karabekir's report to General Harbord.
Regarding the Caucasus region.
Yes, the British confiscation of food and medicine depots led to mass starvation.
The civilian population was reduced to consuming next year's seed grain just to survive.
And Karabekir reported that the arms confiscated in Batum were actively redistributed to Armenian, Greek, and Russian factions.
The localized implementation was relentless. Rawlinson collected artillery breeches and rifle bolts in Erzurum.
Ferritin Altay reported a British officer locking up the entire Konya armory.
In the Manisa incident, a British lieutenant ordered the 23rd Artillery Regiment to return their 10.5mm mountain howitzers to the depot.
Right before the Greek occupation of the city, effectively handing the weapons to the advancing forces.
The naval demise was equally absolute.
David Walder describes the fleet rusting away in the Bosphorus.
And Horace Rumbold utilizing a private vessel as his personal yacht.
Churchill famously summarized this posture by referring to the, quote, kneeling turkey.
So establishing that stripping the military of weapons was phase one. This was accompanied by a targeted purge of nationalist commanders.
Right. We have to analyze how the systematic removal of World War I commanders functioned as both a strategic safeguard and a psychological operation.
The fall of Ali Ajsan Pasha is a perfect example.
He had peacefully handed over Mosul in November 1918, but protested the march on Diyarbakir.
The catalyst was his arrest of British Colonel Killing.
Right, because Killing was independently negotiating with Kurdish tribes.
This assertion of authority infuriated Allenby, leading to his immediate recall.
Which brings us to the Allenby Ultimatum.
In February 1919, Allenby arrives in Istanbul and forces the Ottoman ministers to stand while his aide reads a non-negotiable 12-point ultimatum.
The points were comprehensive. The removal of Ali Ehsan.
The surrender of all 6th Army weapons.
The disarmament of civilians and gendarmes.
The return of Armenians and absolute control of railways and telegraphs.
Along with sweeping arrest powers. This directly led to the ministers resigning.
And Ali Ehsan was arrested at Haydar Pasha Station and exiled to Malta.
They systematically punished the Caucasus commanders as well.
Nuri Pasha, Mursal Bey, and Ali Rifat Bey.
Ali Rifat Bey was actually judged in a Batum tribunal and fined for a burned radio station despite a lack of evidence.
Then you have Yakub Shefki Pasha. He was removed specifically for supporting the local resistance councils, the Shortas.
He was arrested in a Haydar Pasha hospital bed and exiled to Malta.
Nihat Pasha was similarly banned from entering Adana.
And this harassment reached the very top of the Ministry of War.
General Milne pursued Mursili Simil Pasha and Javad Pasha.
In December 1919, Milne issued a 48-hour ultimatum demanding their dismissal.
He cited 6 specific charges of aiding the Kuva Yamiliye.
Right. Sending officers, discharging soldiers to join the militia, smuggling weapons, and unauthorized troop movements.
Mustafa Kemal sent intense telegrams from Anatolia, urging the government to resist this attack on political independence.
But the parliament capitulated, and the ministers were dismissed.
The physical humiliation of these officers was clearly intentional.
Yes, the arrest of Atuf Bey in Eskişehir, for instance.
And General Salih Flood's threat of court-martial against Ali Fuat Pasha.
The most striking evidence is the eyewitness account by Ahmet Emin Yalman.
Regarding the prison camps in Malta.
He documented Savat Pasha and other high-ranking generals being physically assaulted and dragged across the ground by ordinary British privates.
An inversion of hierarchy designed to shatter their prestige. Now, shifting from high-ranking generals, we must look at the localized control mechanisms across Anatolia.
Right. How this power manifested in daily administrative interactions.
We see the deployment of British control officers.
Their arrogance was systemic, and they were a massive financial burden, with the Turks forced to pay for their housing and transport.
You have the incident with the lieutenant in Bursa.
Yes, demanding the provincial governor visit him at his private residence.
And Ali Fuat Pasha's encounter in Ankara with a British captain.
The captain who sat without permission demanded German belts and pounded the table during the interrogation.
Which resulted in Ali Fuat Pasha imprisoning the captain for 5 days.
Though that was an exception, the Konya incident is more representative.
Where a control officer forced the exile of Ferhat Altay and 5 others over local protests regarding Izmir.
And Rawlinson in Erzurum demanding the arrest of Deli Halit Pasha, forcing Karabekir to literally hide him.
These control officers also facilitated the prosecution of the Unionists, the İttihatçılar.
Yes, pursuing war crimes tribunals regarding the Armenian deportations.
In February 1919, they demanded the list of 7, including Enver and Talat from Germany.
When that failed, they exiled over 100 prominent local figures to Malta.
The local executions driven by the High Commission were particularly severe.
The execution of Bozazlayan Kamakama Kemal in April 1919.
And Babert Kemakama Nusret in August 1919.
It even led to the suicide of Diyarbakir Governor Rashid Bey.
They prosecuted intellectuals like Ziya Gökalp, heavily utilizing the Armenian Greek branch of the High Commission.
The underlying mindset is revealed in Admiral Calthorpe's April 1919 letter to Balfour,
where he formally suggested that properly punishing the crimes against Armenians would require the execution of all Turks.
Which brings us to the tactical exception in this entire architecture of control.
Mustafa Kemal.
Right. Given the rigorous British intelligence and the zero-tolerance policy we just outlined, how did he manage to get appointed as inspector of the Ninth Army?
And secure the visas to go to Anatolia.
It was achieved through a stark contrast between his public persona and private actions.
Privately, in November 1918, he was urging Grand Vizier Izzet Pasha to militarily resist the British at Iskenderun.
But publicly, he executed a meticulous charm offensive.
He cultivated an intensely pro-British image.
He befriended Reverend Frew, a known intelligence asset.
He gave highly compliant, pro-British interviews to the Member and Vakit newspapers.
He even offered his services as an administrator to the journalist Ward Price.
An offer that was completely dismissed by Colonel Haywood, who failed to see the subterfuge.
Crucially, he convinced Dammit Ferret and the Sultan of his absolute loyalty.
This resulted in the liaison officer, Bennett, approving his visa to Samson, fully believing he had the Sultan's trust.
But the British realization of their error was swift.
Because the facade dropped the moment he landed in Samson.
He immediately treated the British troop presence as an attack.
By June 1919, General Milne was demanding his immediate recall to Istanbul.
A recall that Mustafa Kemal openly defied, severing ties with the compliant government.
Synthesizing the sheer scale of the information we have covered, we see the totality of the British strategy.
It was comprehensive. Diplomatic isolation, total military disarmament, the removal of experienced leadership.
Micromanagement via localized control officers, and judicial punishment through tribunals.
Yet, the text highlights an ultimate, almost baffling historical paradox.
Yes, despite this transparent, harshly implemented policy intended to destroy the state.
The Turkish press and public actively avoided anti-British sentiment at the time,
They're still trying to appease them.
which led to Admiral de Robec's amused observation to Curzon in October 1919.
Noting that Britain still occupied a good place in nationalist Turkish newspapers, despite executing this dismantlement.
It is a profound psychological observation regarding a defeated populace.
Which leaves you, the listener, with a final academic inquiry to consider, building upon these sources.
Right.
If an occupying power successfully dismantles the physical military, the diplomatic avenues, and the top-tier leadership of a defeated nation,
Yet the localized bureaucracy and the public still attempt to appease that power.
at what precise psychological breaking point does a population pivot from seeking survival through submission to seeking survival through open rebellion?